and then I'm going to start. All right, we will let some people come in. I'm sure the list is coming. So good morning, everybody. This beautiful rainy day down here in Galion, Mansfield area. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Miranda Jones. I'm the executive director at the Galion-Crestline Chamber. But when Janelle retired from our safety council after 30 plus years, I also took over as safety council manager. So we appreciate everybody logging on. I'm very excited about the presentation today, but I'm going to turn it over to Stacy and let Stacy do some BWC updates for us first.
Thank you, Miranda. So hello, everybody out there. Again, if you don't know who I am your employer services specialist at the Bureau of Workers' Compensation from the Mansfield area. I talk to employers about their rates, why they pay what they pay, and how to, any advice I can give on how to manage claims that might save you some money down the road. That's my role. You also have safety consultants that are assigned to you. And if you have any thoughts or desires about wanting to get in touch with any of those folks, I am happy to help you with that. You just let me know. Wanted to just bring to your attention a couple of deadlines that are coming here at the end of the month on March the 31st. For any of you that are participating in our EMCAP program or our one claim program. And believe me, you'll know who you are. If neither of those programs sound familiar to you, then you don't need to worry about it. But there is an annual training requirement that you have to meet before the end of March in order to retain your discount that you're getting for that program. So it's 3 hours worth of training. And online training counts this year, no matter what year you're participating in for either EMCAP or one claim program. So if you have any questions about that, let me know. I can help you with getting some information on what trainings would qualify and how we can get you into some training and make sure you meet that requirement before the end of March. Also wanted to make sure for any of you that are in our drug-free safety program, either at the comparable or basic or advanced levels of participation, you all have an annual report that is due by the end of March. The report is available to complete online right now. If you have any trouble accessing the report or have any questions about what to enter on the report, just get a hold of me. My number, as always, and I sometimes Miranda puts it up there for everybody, is cell phone is 419-606-4617. Also wanted to just kind of do a little shout out here for some upcoming training. I know Miranda has shared with you some of the virtual training classes offered by our Division of Safety and Hygiene kind of through the end of April, I believe. We also offer monthly webinars, which are a little separate from the virtual training classes offered by the Division of Safety and Hygiene. The webinar is not included on that brochure, and I forwarded it to Miranda so she can share it with you folks. So I am actually doing this training, and half of it anyway, and a safety consultant from the Lima Service Office, Mona Weiss, will be assisting me with doing that training. We are offering credit for that class. It is going to be an hour and a half long, and it is on April 13th from 11 to 12:30. So it is a mini controlling workers' compensation cost class. For any of you who have attended that in the past, it's going to be a condensed version of that, but lots of good information. And, for those of you who are interested in kind of getting an overview of what goes into rate making, how you can assist in, maybe controlling those costs, what's coming into your experience, and, how do things like settlement and handicaps work? I would encourage you to participate in the webinar, attend, and if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, or I'll provide some information on how to contact the assigned employer service specialist for your area if it isn't me. And let's see here. Oh, one more thing. Wanted to make sure that everybody knew also March 31st, that's kind of the big deadline today. Every employer, we are encouraging you to take a hard look at your estimated payroll. So as you are likely aware, we assess premium for the current policy year based on an estimate of payroll. And at the very beginning of this policy year, mid-pandemic, we did something that we thought would be very helpful to employers, but we are now making sure that you're aware of what we did. And if you need to make any changes, you can. We reduced your payroll by 20%, which obviously has the effect of reducing your premium. So it was in an effort to be helpful during the pandemic and the financial crunch that's happening with all of that. But we also don't want employers to be unduly surprised when it comes to true-up time in August. So at that point in time, that's when you'll have to, make up for what wasn't properly estimated. Unless you take a look at it right now, you have until March 31st to make any changes to that estimated payroll. If you want to do so, you can't do it online yourself. You have to talk to me or call into the 800 number, but we can help you with that. And that is all I had. Back to you, Miranda.
All right, thank you, Stacy. Today our presentation is going to be from Stephanie York. She is the Vice President and in-house counsel at Hennes Communications, which is one of the few firms in the U.S. focused exclusively on crisis communications and crisis management. Hennes Communications serves corporate government agencies, nonprofits, education, and healthcare institutions, as well as law firms and their clients that are on trial in the court of public opinion. So with over 25 years experience in law and communications, Stephanie and the firm's past and present clients include 2016 Cleveland Host Committee for the recent Republican National Convention, Kent State University, Oberlin College, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, as well as scores of municipalities and law firms across the U.S. Better recognized as the Assistant Law Director and spokesperson for the city of Akron and former Mayor Don, I'm not even going to try his last name.
Pasquale.
Stephanie serves on many local nonprofit boards, including the United Way of Summit County, the Akron Symphony, Downtown Akron, Kiwanis Foundation, and the Jewish Community Board of Akron. So let's give a warm welcome to Stephanie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm going to share my screen now. You guys got it up there?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. So there are 110 reasons why some reporter might stick a microphone in your face and ask you about something you don't want to talk about or something you know nothing about. An employee files a sexual harassment or discrimination suit, a deadly accident at a county fair, a death of an executive or an employee, allegations of fiscal mismanagement, equipment failure, chemical spill, explosion, a COVID outbreak, zoning issues, thefts, fires, and worst case scenario, the workplace violence, the active shooter. Well, when the cameras show up, don't let this happen to you.
Councilman, when you did become aware of the mistake, why didn't you try to change it? Why didn't you try to correct it?
Because I was unaware of it.
I'm saying, when you became aware of it.
Wait a minute now. Let's stop it. Don't put me to the third degree on it. I told you what the damn mistake was. Now don't put me to the third degree on it. I don't have to answer that to you.
When you became
I
aware,
told you, goddammit, now get out of my way.
when you became aware,
Put that camera out.
when you became
okay?
aware of the mistake, Councilman. Hey, Councilman, what are you doing?
Question about a patient. Dr. McCluskey, please. What are you running from?
Let's put that on the 6 o'clock news. This reporter is a jerk, and he screws people's lives up.
You don't mind if I talk to your
No,
receptionist?
yes, I do.
Why? I want to
Give
ask
me
her.
that. I want that film right now.
Easy. Hey. Hey, my coat's in there, Mr. Guilford. Do you have naked women on the golf course?
No. It was during a follow-up interview that Forlani asked me to leave the clubhouse, but not before he threatened my family.
All right, is there anything else you want to say about this, Sal?
Nope, not at all.
Okay. Well, all right.
But if your kid does play on that football team, I'm going to make sure my kid does.
What's that?
If your kid plays on that football team, I want to make sure my kid goes one-on-one with him. We'll see what happens.
What's life been like for you since you admitted you were a crook 20 months ago? Federal prosecutors say you acted like the Godfather and ran a criminal enterprise out of the county building.
Tom, I have no comment, Tom.
Well, when municipalities, government agencies, law firms, companies, hospitals, universities, schools, and nonprofits across the country get attacked by the media like that, those organizations often call for someone like me. I am a crisis communication specialist. I'm not a PR guy. And let me tell you the difference. PR people are in the education business, educating a group of people over a period of time to get them to buy more widgets. They increase the market share. They bring more attention to your brand. Well, let me tell you, if you're in the middle of a crisis, more attention is the last thing you want. And the methodologies we use at Hennes are very counterintuitive to the traditional practice of public relations. In fact, it's our elevator speech. Our job is to make your story better, is to make your story shorter, is to make your story go away. In fact, the best stories I have, I can't tell you because we've literally made them go away. It is true that legal controversies today are tried in the court of public opinion as often, if not more, than the court of law. It is also a fact that your company's greatest uninsured asset is its reputation. Let me repeat that. The greatest uninsured asset of your company is its reputation. Think about it. We insure the furniture that goes in the buildings. We insure the buildings that your employees work in. We even insure the health of your employees, right? But we don't insure against a reputational attack. And because so many of the situations I previously mentioned are settled prior to going to court or any sort of legal case, I would suggest that managing the court of public opinion is most important. So with all that as a backdrop, and to help you control the court of public opinion, we use something called the damage control playbook. And it has 6 simple concepts, and I'm going to teach them to you so you could be a really good crisis communication specialist. If you learn just the first 3 or 4, you will be a really good crisis communication specialist. If you learn all 6, you could have my job. Not that you would want it. Okay, so if you're taking any notes at all, or if you want to take a picture of this screen, this is the most important advice that I will give you today. Rule number 1, tell the truth. Tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. Why? Because the truth always comes out. It may not come out today. It may not come out in a week. It may not come out for 3 years when a court case is over. But if it comes out and they find out you've lied, you've damaged your organization's reputation going forward as well as going backwards. And the corollary to that is true. Also, do not deny the obvious. If the media has this much of the story, they're going to get the rest of the story, and you're not smart enough to spin your way out of that. Rule number 2, tell it first. The person who tells the story first typically determines the trajectory of the story. And rule number 3, we beg our clients, tell it all. Tell everything you are legally, morally, and ethically able to tell. Because if you don't tell it all, someone else is telling their version of all, which may or may not be true. And again, all you are doing is playing catch up. Let me give you an example of how this works. The tell the truth, tell it first, tell it all. I get a call from a law director from a small municipality just outside of Cleveland. I go out there. Law director lays out a big HR problem. They're going to fire someone. And so I ask him, what do you want us to do? He says, well, I want to make sure this doesn't get on the front page of the paper. I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to call the reporter that covers your city, because there's a reporter that covers every agency, city. Have that reporter come out. We're going to give the reporter the story. We're going to give the reporter the personnel file of the person you're going to fire. We're going to redact what we need to redact, social security numbers, addresses, things like that. But we're going to give the reporter the whole story. That law director looked at me like I was crazy. He said, we're going to do what? And I repeated myself. He said, I can't do that. It goes against everything I learned in law school. In law school, we were told you don't give bad information until it's discovered, until you ask the right questions in the court of law and you are forced to give the answer. I said, well, you were schooled in the court of law. I was schooled in the court of public opinion. If we do it your way, we will end up on the front page of the paper. If you do it my way, the worst thing that happens is we end up on the front page of the paper. The best thing that happens is we're not in there at all. He said, okay, I'm nervous, but I'll give it a try. The reporter comes in, give him the story. Next day I go out, pull the plain dealer out of my paper box, reading it, nothing on the front page, A1, A2, A3, nothing in the whole front section. Local section, B1, B2, B3, nothing in the local section. Day 2, nothing in the paper. Day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9. It showed up all right on day 9. B11, bottom of the fold, in 3 tiny paragraphs. And every time we tell the story, even in the city where it happened, nobody knows what we're talking about because we told the truth, We told it first. We told it all. If you think about the way reporters process things, if it's not leaked to them by an angry ex-employee or a disgruntled PTA mom, or if they don't have to dig it out themselves through public records requests or something like that, it doesn't seem to have the same importance as if you just give them the story. Similar story, completely different result. I get a call from a nonprofit, the executive director from a nonprofit. He says, we have 2 employees that embezzled over $1 million. I said, wow, that's a big story. He goes, I know. I said, what do you want us to do? He says, I want to make sure the media never finds out about it. I said, okay, how many people in your organization know about it? He says, oh, about 23. I said, 23 people, you can't keep this out in the paper. It's probably already there. In fact, the reporter's probably writing the story. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to call a reporter we know and trust, because I'll take fair over slanted any day of the week. We are going to go to that reporter. We're going to bring the personnel files. We're going to give the reporter the story. Well, that executive director says, I can't do that. I'll look stupid. I said, well, how are you going to look when you're an investigative reporter standing outside your building saying your tax dollars squandered, news at 11? So you're going to look terrible. He's like, okay, let's do it. Go there, give the story to the reporter. I go out to the paper the next day, completely different result. This is B1, top of the fold, giant headline. I mean, giant, maybe just slightly smaller than Man Walks on Moon. It was a big headline, but it said agency discovers loss, takes action. It was a good headline. It was a good story. Tell the truth, tell it all, tell it first. This stuff works. Rule number 4, tell it fast. The internet has changed everything, but especially the relationship between TV news reporters and print reporters. I mean, after all, up until about 7 years ago, who broke news? TV broke news, because if it was in the paper, when did it happen? By definition, it happened yesterday, right? But nowadays, every reporter is told, you don't leave that council meeting until you tweet something. You don't leave that school board meeting until you put something up on Facebook. And they're not just competing with other reporters to get the news out fast. They're competing with your own employees that are using their cell phones, taking pictures and tweeting things as it happens during meetings, during events. And this has given rise to something we call iterative journalism. It's the biggest thing you've never heard of. The way this works is, say 3 of you are part of my story. I'm the reporter. I call 3 of you up. In the old days, I would wait all day by my phone for you to call me back. If you didn't call me back, I would go out to your place of work. If you dodged me there, I'd go to your home. But I couldn't sit down and write that story until I talked to all 3 of you, because my editor would be like, you don't have a story. Go back out there, get them to talk, right? The new way is I call the 3 of you up. You have 10 minutes to get back to me. You don't get back to me, I'm putting it up on ohio.com, cleveland.com, putting it up on our website. And what happens is I put that story up and the first person sees it and says, oh my gosh, these facts are wrong. That person calls me up and says, hey, you got A, B, and C wrong. I'm happy to change the story. It now has a new iteration. And then the second person calls me up and says, hey, you let so-and-so from that company talk, but we didn't get to put our side of the story in. Well, I'm happy to change the story. It has a new iteration, right? And then the third person who's been in meetings all day long, no fault of their own, gets the message, calls me back at the end of the day. By this time, the story may have had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different iterations, right? The problem with waiting so long is, where do people get their news? They get it, they read it on their cell phone, right? Let me ask you, how many times do you read a story? Do you go back and read it again later? Unless you're part of the story, never, right? So if you've waited all day and you want to add something to the story, nobody's going to read it. So I suggest, if you're put in that terrible position, you call the reporter up and you say, hey, I want to give you some new information. It's really good information, but I want a new headline. I want a new story. Why? Because that starts the whole process all over again, right? You got a new story. All those new eyes are looking at it. And the reporter will probably do it because they get paid by the story, they get paid by the click. Now, where is the court of public opinion first convened these days? Kind of talked about it. On social media, right? On Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, right? So when the first round, when the first issue or crisis hits, you need to be prepared for the first round of social media. A May 2019 Pew Institute study reported that 67% of US adults get their news on social media. 67% of adults get their news from Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, not the news stations, not the paper. It went from 0 to 67 in about 5 to 7 years. In breaking news situations, Twitter is the go-to news outlet. Several years ago, we first learned of the shooting at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando on Twitter. And it wasn't reported by reporters. It was reported by the people who were there as it happened. Here was the first tweet. OMG, shooting at Pulse, we hid in the bathroom and we can't find our friends. And then the owners of Pulse went to Twitter and posted this. Everyone get out of Pulse and keep running. And then the Orlando police went straight to Twitter to keep people informed. Pulse shooting, the shooter inside the club is dead. Think about that for a moment. The Orlando police communicated the biggest news likely in its history first on Twitter. And of course, that's where our president lives, and that's where our previous president lived, and that's where politicians live, right? They go to Twitter to get out news now. So social media is arguably the most powerful tool we have for distributing and receiving information during a crisis. And there are some overall approaches that can be applied to any media interaction, but especially social media. Guiding principles, be transparent. Listen, online audiences expect open communication. They will see through any attempt to hide or cover up the facts. Trying to be anything other than fully transparent will erode the trust you have built up with your stakeholders. Be responsive. Listen, online communication is a two-way street. When stakeholders address you with concerns and questions through your social media site, they will expect responses. Be fast. Social media sites such as Twitter thrive on real-time communications. They have turned what used to be a 24-hour news cycle into a 24-second news cycle. Therefore, it's important to be as timely as possible with all communications. If you're not driving the conversation about what's going on, some incident that happened, some crisis that's going on, somebody else will be driving that conversation, and they may be providing facts that are not accurate. So you need to be on top of that. And finally, couple your words with action. Your online constituents will only be motivated to support you if they see that your organization is following through on its promises. So if you offer to address a situation or solve a problem, make sure your organization is prepared to act accordingly, because everybody will be waiting to see if you follow through on it. And finally, be professional and be human. Listen, social media, after all, is about being social. It means using language that incorporates compassion, understanding, gratitude, respect, and even remorse if appropriate. Corporate speak and legalese does not win friends and supporters online. Listen, I'm an attorney. Nobody wants to hear from me in the middle of a crisis. They don't want to know everything I can't say because it's a matter, no comment. It's in court. We can't talk about it, right? It's a legal matter. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to know what is going on and they want to hear it from you in plain language. Here's one of my favorite examples of being professional and being human. A Red Cross social media specialist thought she was tweeting a friend, and she put this tweet up to the entire Red Cross social media feed in the world. Ryan found 2 more 4-bottle packs of Dogfish Head's Midas Touch beer. When we drink, we do it right. #GettingSlizzard. That tweet was up for about an hour when the Red Cross social media director was alerted to it. She took down the tweet and apologized, But she didn't stop there. Quickly and impressively thinking, she put up this tweet. We've deleted the rogue tweet, but rest assured the Red Cross is sober and we've confiscated the keys. It was a good apology. It was humorous, right? This was a self-inflicted wound. So they can be a little self-deprecating in their humor. Final result, Dogfish Head Beer staged a fundraiser for the Red Cross. Red Cross was praised for its response, and traffic to the Red Cross site actually increased. They got more people to follow them on Twitter and Facebook because of this incident. Another example, a little more extreme, happened in the UK. This was also several years ago. Kentucky Fried Chicken in London had the lovely experience of running out of chicken. They had a new delivery provider and logistics got screwed up, and most of KFC's 900 locations had to temporarily shut down. Now that is a crisis for KFC. There is no question about that. And where did people who wanted KFC go to voice their complaints? Of course, they went to social media. They went to Twitter, and they even tried to get the Manchester police involved, which prompted the police to do this. They tweeted this: please do not contact us about the hashtag KFC crisis. It is not a police matter if your favorite eatery is not serving the menu you desire. But more importantly, what did KFC do? They did this. Yes, they did. And I guarantee they did not run that by their attorney before they put it up, because nobody would permit that. But it was brilliant. It was funny, right? This again was another self-inflicted wound, but they also followed it up with a very well done apology posted on social media, and they took out a full page Sunday ad that said, "We're sorry. A chicken restaurant without any chicken, it's not ideal. Huge apologies to our customers, especially those who traveled out of their way to find we were closed. And endless thanks to our KFC team members and our franchise partners for working tirelessly to improve the situation. It's been a hell of a week, but we're making progress, and every day more and more fresh chicken is being delivered to our restaurants. Thank you for bearing with us." Again, I realize you guys might not be that bold, and I'm not trying to get anyone fired, but the point again is that social media has to be social. It has to be human to work. And when it is, it can really work to deflect criticism and end a crisis. With all that said, I'm going to give you best practices on social media, and then we'll go back to the damage control playbook. Best practices. Monitor and be prepared to respond. Listen, social media is a 24/7 news environment. That's where we are these days. If you are posting online, you need to be monitoring. Don't let mistakes live on. Respond and correct misinformation in real time. Do not allow misstatements of facts or incorrect characterizations of your organization to go unchallenged. Correct the error in a straightforward, professional way, but make sure it's an error of fact. Correct the error once. Which brings me to my next point. Don't arm wrestle with trolls. We all know who they are. Resist the urge to get caught up in exchanges with rude and obnoxious people on social media. Respond to correct an error, but don't feel compelled to continue the conversation should that person then challenge you or your response. Pause before hitting delete. Listen, there are a lot of things you might not like to see on social media about your organization, right? Opinions. Your facility is terrible. Your trainers are awful. The product didn't work. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of opinions out there. I would leave them up. People will come to your rescue, and they will, say, "Oh, I found that it worked well," or "I find that they're very helpful." But so resist the urge to delete or hide. Excuse me, I gotta sneeze. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Resist the urge to delete or hide negative postings on your official social media sites. If you are a government agency, you cannot delete or hide things only under certain circumstances, but you can do it under these circumstances. resist the urge to do it unless they are offensive, meaning they are racially motivated, they have profanity, there are personal attacks on people, they're threatening people. And if you remove or hide a comment, explain why. Say, this is Stephanie York, Director of Communications for ABC Company. We removed the previous post because it contained, racially charged language. Please be kind on our site. If you just delete or hide things, people will repost it. The person that posted it took a screenshot, they'll repost it and say, oh, you can't say anything on this. They'll just start, taking away your free speech rights, right? And that becomes the issue. People will understand if you need to remove something that's offensive, racially motivated, profane, personal attacks, or threatening. Just tell them why, and they will understand. Go offline to get back on track. Offer to contact the person who posted a critical comment offline to resolve the issues. This worked for me numerous times, and we give this advice to our clients a lot. Especially, we've had some where we've had people that were trying to get protests, lined up. We're going to have a protest. Join us here. To reach out to those people. Offer to meet them in a neutral location, right? They can have their attorney or whoever, but offer to meet them and try to work out the issue. Find out what their beef really is. Find out why that person's complaining about your billing or your services or your product. Maybe they just need someone to complain to. Maybe it's something you can actually fix. Maybe there was a billing error. I find if you go offline and you talk to them, first of all, they're a different person when you get them on the phone than when they're sitting back behind their computer hacking nasty things, right, about you. If you get them offline, sometimes they're much nicer. Sometimes if you're willing to listen and try to help them, they may even go back online and change their comment or remove it themselves. Know who's running the site. If seriously incorrect information appears on a news outlet's comment board or social media site, consider contacting the publication's online content manager. That would either be the online editor, the director of digital communications, director of community engagement. Request help in having that comment removed. They do not want incorrect information on their site. They'll let opinions stand. Again, if someone's just saying something bad about you, that's one thing. But if it's incorrect, they will want it removed as well. And finally, remember your audience. You're not talking to the troll or to the one person that asked the, a pointed question. You're talking to everybody, all your stakeholders who come to your site, to your Facebook page, to your Twitter feed to find out what's going on. So remember that broader audience. Going back to our damage control playbook, rule number 5, tell it to the people who matter most. Listen, when you're dealing with conventional media, and I mean TV and newspapers, you're dealing with mass media. Mass media is good. You get to talk to a lot of people all at once. The problem is mass media filters. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you filter something, you change the way it looks, the way it feels, the way it tastes. For example, I'm a reporter. I'm coming out to interview you. Did I sleep good last night? Where did I go to school? Did I have breakfast this morning? Am I hungry? Am I hangry? Did I argue with my spouse? The filtering's already starting before I even get to you. I get to you. What goes in my notes? What doesn't go into my notes? I go back to my office. I write the story. What goes into the story? What stays on the cutting room floor? Then the story goes to an editor. Where did he go to school? Did he have a good day? Is he in a good mood? And then the editor wordsmiths it. And we all know, all you writers out there, if you change a comma in a paragraph, you can change the whole thrust, the whole meaning of that paragraph. And then a headline is written. Little known fact, reporters typically don't write the headlines. It's done by a headline writer. It is an art form. How do you take this really long story and parse it down into 3 or 4 words? It is not easy to do. And now I'm going to ask you, how many times do you read a headline and then you read the story and there's a fundamental disconnect between the two? You read the headline, you think you know what the story is about. In fact, you know what it's about. And then you read the story and you're like, wow, that's not what I thought it was going to say, right? Well, if that story is about your organization and the headline doesn't match the story, you have a problem. Why? Because people do not read the paper from one end to the other, or the internet from one end to the other, as if that's even possible. What they do is they pick out headlines that are important to them, that involve them, and then they read the story. right? That highly interest them. So all those people that are just reading the headlines think they know what that story is about, and they will talk about the story as if they know what it said, because that they were clear what that headline said. And that's a problem, because that is not what happened to your organization, right? And the reason I'm telling you about all this filtering stuff is that when we're called into a sudden crisis situation, the first thing we're thinking is, how do we get your words to your stakeholders without being filtered at all? Well, live TV. You give me live TV and anything else, and I'll take live TV. I know you're thinking that's horrible. Nobody wants live TV. No, you want live TV, because for 10 to 12 seconds, you can say whatever you want about that situation. You can't control what goes before it or what goes after it, but for 10 to 12 seconds, you can say whatever you want. You can get 3 really good messages about your organization out in 10 to 12 seconds. And if you talk as fast as me, you can get 4 good sentences out, 4 good messages out about your organization. But chances are you're not going to get the opportunity at live TV because, first of all, they just don't have enough cameras. They're not going out to every situation to do live TV. And secondly, sometimes they're coming out to do you know what to you, and you don't want that kind of attention, right? So we think, how do you go around the media filter and talk directly to your stakeholders? Because that's who matters to you, right? Let's talk about your stakeholders. Who are your stakeholders? Well, let's say you're a high school, because everyone's gone to high school, right? Here, say you're a high school, and there has been some sort of explosion, an active shooter, a chemical leak, maybe it's some other big crisis, right? Who do you need to get information to? Well, your stakeholders are your teachers, your students, your parents, your board members, your administration, your front office staff, your custodians, your vendors to the school, people that live within a 1-mile radius of a school. I mean, if it's an active shooter, they're going to, get people to leave their houses. You have local, state, and federal regulators, and the list goes on and on. And for every organization out there, I don't care if you're a 2-person mom and pop shop or you're a huge manufacturing firm across, globally, everybody has between 10 and 20 distinct stakeholders. So we think, how do you go around the media filter and talk directly to your stakeholders? Personal meetings. Call your employees in and talk to them. Tell them what happened. Phone calls. Pick up the phone and call your board members, right? Call the people that your big donors, the people that need to know. Town hall meetings, old-fashioned letters. If it's something they don't need today, but they need to know the information, there was a computer hack, nothing got out, this is the steps we took, you can send that in a letter. Email. Email is a great way to get to a lot of people at once about the situation. And of course, digital communications, particularly social media. People who care about your organization will go to your website, they will go to your Facebook page, they will follow your Twitter feed to find out what is going on. And what we find, if we get your words to your stakeholders in fast, they may not believe what they read on the blogs at 3 p.m., what they see on the news at 6 and 11 p.m., or what they read in the paper the next day. Your most important audiences will believe you if they hear from you first about what happened. Listen, it really doesn't take much to discredit the media these days without even throwing a punch. Rule number 6. The media's job is to tell stories. Now, I hate to tell you this next part. It goes against everything you learned in high school civics class. It is not the media's job to inform or educate. Listen, we were taught that reporters are supposed to report facts. They gather them up, they pick them up, and they plop them down right into the paper, right? Wrong, because if they did that, it would be a report. And nobody wants to read a report at 6 o'clock in the morning with their bagel and coffee. I don't ever want to read a report. Reports are boring. They're dreadfully boring. Do not give me a report. So what is the fundamental job of reporters? It is to tell stories. And how do they do that? They take the facts you gave them, the facts you saw with your own eyes, you heard with your own ears, you were there. right? You know to be true, and they throw some out. And they go and talk to other people that give them facts that may or may not be true, right? And they put them in an order that way it may or may not make sense. And they take what's left and they shake them up and they jam them into what we call story frameworks. These stories have names and they have characters that inhabit each framework. For example, when you read about military and sports figures, those are told in the hero framework. You have the good parent that becomes the bad parent, the rich man that becomes the poor man, the Bertie Madoff stories. You have business features. You can't bring that product to market. They bring it to market. It makes $1 gazillion. Reporters love to write those. They almost write themselves and people love to read them. Stories of triumph, stories of overcoming the odds. Those are another great story. Stories of conflict, of honor, of dishonor. Horse race stories. They have no horses, but what they have are winners and losers. And that's how political stories are told. Who's up in Michigan? Who's down in Ohio? Who's winning in Texas? Who's down in Georgia? That's all we heard last year leading up to the election were horse race stories. But what you're going to get hit with, when somebody points the finger at you and says, you should have known that bus driver had a previous DUI. You should have known that lifeguard did not have enough experience. You should have known that product was not ready to go out to consumers. What you're going to be hit with is what we call the 3V framework. The villain who does something to the victim and the vindicator who rides to the rescue. Now, vindicators, they come in all shapes and sizes. It could be the angry PTA mom. It could be the disgruntled employee that you just fired. It could be the reporter trying to dig out what's going on. But it's usually the person pointing the finger saying, you should have known. And the problem with the 3V framework, and it's twofold. It is triggered the second the accusation is made, whether you heard it or not. And the only thing that matters is the speed of your reply. It's a terrible situation to be in. And I'm going to give you an example of how you get in this position. You get a call, your company gets a call at 8 in the morning, it's left on the overnight voicemail. It's the New York Times calling about allegations of sexual harassment at your organization. Reporter leaves a message. Receptionist picks it up after retrieving it, goes, oh my gosh, sends it up to her boss, right? You know what flows downhill? Calls from the New York Times typically flow uphill. Her manager gets it, says, oh my gosh, I better send this to the president of the firm, right? Of the organization. Forwards it to the president. President, it's about 11 o'clock, gets the message, says, oh my God, we better call you got it, attorney. Why? Because we have superpowers. Attorneys can do everything. Attorneys always get involved, right? So the attorney, the president, the HR person, they all huddle up and they say, okay. The attorney says, do not call them back. We have to figure out what this is about. You can't just cold call a reporter back. So they try to figure out what this is about. They think they know what it's about. Then the attorney says, do not call the reporter back. I will call him back. Well, let me tell you, no matter how many degrees that attorney has from Harvard, Yale, OSU, Akron University, you name it, that lawyer is about to drive the truck off the cliff. And let me tell you why. That call was made at 8 a.m. It's now 3 p.m. It's being returned by a lawyer. The reporter now knows he has a story, and it just makes him hang on tighter and dig deeper, right? And then the attorney makes things worse by saying, no comment. It's a matter under litigation. I'm sorry, folks. What do you think of when you hear no comment? Guilty, guilty, guilty. Listen, there may be things you can't talk about. There certainly are privacy considerations when you're dealing with personnel issues. HIPAA might come into play for some organizations. There may be legitimate legal concerns. So yes, confer with your attorney, but there is always something you can say. For example, I can't talk about a specific allegation of sexual harassment, but what I can tell you is when we get allegations like that, here are the steps our organization takes to investigate. You got a good quote in the paper. You don't talk about a specific instance, right? But no comment cannot be an option. And it's much the same on social media. If you're on Facebook or Twitter or a comment board that's talking about a news story and some person or organization is being vilified, and they're not speaking up on their own behalf, don't you wonder where they are? Like, why aren't they saying this isn't true? Right? At least you're allowing everyone else to define your role in this situation and perhaps forever cement how people will remember you. Silence is not golden when you're dealing with a crisis. Meanwhile, it's on the blogs, TV news, newspaper, internet that you are the villain. But let's assume you're not. You didn't do anything wrong. Maybe you're the vindicator or even the victim in this case. The real insidious problem with the 3V framework is when the facts don't fit the story frame, people discard the facts. In other words, once everybody already thinks you're the villain, all you do is reinforce the role they want you to play. You can't talk your way out of being the villain, right? You can't. Once you're in that role, you have to act your way out of it. What do villains do? They don't return calls timely or at all. They don't make eye contact when talking with reporters or people that ask questions. They speak through their spokespersons or attorneys. They don't know how to say they're sorry that something happened. What do vindicators do? They return calls, they make eye contact, they speak for themselves, and they know how to say I'm sorry without taking legal responsibility. So I'm often asked, what do you do if you are the villain? I mean, think about it. Bad things happen to good organizations and good people. People make mistakes. We are human, right? We make bad judgments. We hire the wrong people. People get hurt because of that, right? Well, I told you the 3 V's, and now I'm going to tell you the 3 F's. Well, I won't tell you the first F because it's a really bad word, and I promised I wouldn't say that here on this presentation, and it's being taped. So I will paraphrase. If you F up, fess up, and fix up. In other words, admit what happened, for goodness sakes, but pivot immediately over to what you're going to do so it doesn't happen again. You quickly go from being the villain to being the vindicator in the same news story. Listen, you're not going to like the first paragraph or two that's written about everything your company did wrong or that you did wrong, but you force the reporter to write the rest of the story, which is what you're doing to fix the problem so it doesn't happen to anybody else. Bottom line, most reporters today are serving 2 masters. I do believe they want to get to the truth, but I also believe they want to be first. And if you don't decide what character you want to play in their story and get out first and embrace it, the media will assign you the character. And many times it's the character of the villain. So remember that first video I showed you about how not to behave when a reporter is ambushing you with a microphone? Well, I can't leave you like that, right? I have to show you what to do to get out of that situation. So our my colleague, Howard Fensel at Hennes Communications, put together this video. He used to be a news producer. He put together this video on how to respond should you go out to your car and there's a reporter waiting to ask you questions about something that happened at your organization.
It's happened to me, and it's happened to just about every PR person on the face of the earth. Your client comes up to you and asks, how can you guarantee that I can get on TV? Well, I managed TV newsrooms for 20 years, and here are a few techniques that I've seen work every time. You can run away from the reporter as fast as you can. Grab the videographer's camera and wrestle with it. You could jump in your car and floor it. You could slam the door in the reporter's face. We usually see this kind of behavior when people are ambushed by a TV reporter. I can tell you that nothing made me more gleeful in a newsroom than a reporter skipping into the newsroom with an ear-to-ear grin telling me, you got to see this one. And then they play back video of him chasing some poor sap into a building or around a car. Usually the whole newsroom winds up gathering around to watch. So guess what video is edited into each and every promotional spot that day? And guess what video is edited into each and every follow-up story that gets done? You know, it just doesn't have to be this way. The best way to handle an ambush interview, don't give the reporter anything they can use. If you're getting in your car and suddenly a microphone is stuck in your face and a red-faced reporter is shouting provocative questions at you, take a deep breath and as politely and calmly as you can, get out of your car and say, I will be glad to talk about this. I can't do it right now, but I can meet you in 15 minutes. And if the reporter insists, repeat it again. Is that exciting TV? Of course not. The reporter probably won't use it in their story. So keep your cool. Buy yourself a little time to prepare. Do the interview in a neutral location. If you try it, you may turn an ambush interview into an opportunity for you to deliver meaningful messages.
So I'm going to let you know about a newsletter we have. It comes out twice a month into your email. It's called Crisis Management Today. And if you like what you heard here today, it is best practice link. It tells you tips and tricks on how to handle a crisis situation. It goes over things that you've seen in the news, what people did right, what they did wrong. And it has cutting edge things, trends going on in crisis communications. We were doing stuff about COVID back in February, but of last year, before the COVID became big. We just knew this was going to be a trend coming up. So send your email Hennes at crisiscommunications.com. It's on your screen, and type subscribe in the subject line. It's as easy as that. You will get the first newsletter. And if you don't like it, it's easy to unsubscribe. We have over 8,000 subscribers, and I think you'll enjoy it. I'm going to stop sharing and see if there are any questions. If anybody has any questions, that'd be great. Or just shout it out or put it in the chat box.
Yeah, if you, just a couple housekeepings down below, if you want to, it's either in the Q&A or in the chat box. That would be great. We did have a comment from Michelle. Thanks, Michelle, for tuning in. It's the second time she's heard Stephanie at this. It's a great job and very informative. So
thank you.
I think in relevance, I was so excited that Stephanie was able, it was kind of a short, but so quick to respond. I was so excited, but I think this information is pertinent to all of us because I think our organizations and businesses are one crisis away from, having some bad press, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions in, but I do have one. So,
Sure.
Public records request.
Sure.
I think that's just becoming like a go-to for not just news reporters, but nosy citizens as well. How often do you see those requests actually become a notable news story?
I'll tell you, it's really, I actually appreciate when there's a public records request because it gives us a heads up that people are looking into a certain issue. So someone like a government agency will get a public records request, we'll get a call and they're like, listen, someone asked for this, we got to respond. It will take us a few days to do so. Here's our concerns. Then we go ahead and draft, if this comes out and it's the way it looks bad, here are your talking points. Here's your media standby statement. We see that that's a really good tip off as to what's coming versus them getting it leaked to them. And then it just comes out and you're not prepared for it. So I do think, I know people, public records, I worked in the city of Akron for 23 years. I mean, it is overwhelming and a daunting task to respond to all those, but you do get a tip off on what people are looking at and what may become important and what you might need to be prepared for. So keep that in mind that, they're giving you a heads up to get prepared.
I was on a call the other day and they were talking about sunshine laws and how people's text messages are even now considered public record.
If it relates to your job, yes. I mean, it has to still document the business. I mean, so that's my attorney hat on. It has to document the business of, what you do. But if it's within the realm of your job and you're texting, yes.
That just floored me. I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's a public record.
Make some
That's why
snarky comments.
That's why I said you can't delete things on social media. You just have to hide them if you're a government agency. And even hiding them, there's some risks. So you do need to talk to your attorney, but there are things you do not have to keep on your page. Because it is not a First Amendment right to put obscenity up there or threatening things or, confidential things.
I have
So-
seen some Facebook groups like that they pin to the top a post about like guidelines for.
Absolutely.
Is that something that most businesses and organizations should do as well?
I would put in the About Me section on Facebook or pin it, whatever. Here's the rules to engagement. Government agencies are a little different because they have to allow free speech, certain things. But private organizations can say, listen, we reserve the right to remove, posts that we find offensive. Here are our guidelines. And then when you remove something, you can say, please refer to our guideline. We removed the previous post because it didn't meet our guidelines. Please refer to it listed above. And people will understand.
From the chamber's perspective, we had a golf outing and like somebody went back to like 4 golf outings ago and started making derogatory comments about another CEO from an area.
Seriously.
And it was like, what do you do? Like, you have to stop it because all of a sudden this post from 2017 pops up in 2021 and you're like, really? Like,
right. And you say, listen, we don't condone that, this is our site. We reserve the right to remove things that are offensive or that violate our terms. Please be kind to each other or we'll have to, and that's why we remove this post.
Does anybody else have any questions? I see some wonderful comments coming in the chat, and I agree with all of them. What a great presentation. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
You're welcome. If you have any questions, Miranda, you can circulate my contact information to everybody who is on this. They can call me, email me. I'm happy to respond.
And I did remember to hit record on this one. I forgot last meeting, so I will be downloading this video and sending it out with Stephanie's contact information for everybody after. So if there's nothing else, thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For the BWC updates, and we'll see you guys next month.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.